question is asked, could you please speak about Zen Buddhism? First, I would like to make it clear that Zen has almost nothing to do with Buddhism, because the very ground of Zen, the very spirit of Zen, lies not in being a Buddhist, but in being a Buddha. And the difference between the two is so enormous, because the very ground of Zen is just this, that truth is not something that can be understood through the mind. It's not about being a Christian, it's not about being a Hindu, it's not about being a Buddhist. It's about entering as deeply as possible into your own being. It's about discovering what is your innermost nature. And this is what it means to be a Buddha. Once you're living out of your own innermost nature, then your consciousness is totally in communion with existence. And tell me, how else can you be more integrated with existence unless you're absolutely absorbed in it? Yes, you can gather heaps of theories in your mind, you can gather heaps of conclusions in your mind, but after all, there can be no more of an immediate entry into existence except through your involvement in the present moment. So the whole ground of Zen is to just deepen your involvement into the present moment, to totally allow yourself to be absorbed into the present moment. And just through absorbing yourself into the present moment, you're entering deeper and deeper into the very heart of existence. This is the only way of entry into the truth. And this is why in Zen there's no such thing as a belief system. It has no philosophy. Yes, you've heard of the term Zen Buddhism, but it's a bit like this. To say that Zen is Buddhist, it's a bit like saying that meditation is something which is Indian. Because after all, meditation was discovered by people who were living in India. Or it's a bit like saying that electricity is something Western, because it was discovered by Thomas Edison. Or it's a bit like saying that gravity is something which is Christian, because the person who had discovered the mathematics of gravity, the science of gravity, was Isaac Newton, and he was a Christian. It's exactly like that. The people who lived the very spirit of Zen, they happen to be Buddhists. But that's very superficial, it's very insignificant. And if truth is to truly have any true value for man, then it is something which is universal. Something which is universal cannot be categorized. It is not something that you can fix into your one-sided categorizations of the mind. So I want this to be clear. The very spirit of Zen is not about being a Buddhist, but of being a Buddha, of living out of your own pure, true nature. So this is why the whole skillful means of Zen was to enter as deeply as possible into your own being. It strikes to the very heart of the matter. That's why it has no belief system, it has no philosophy. It's not even a philosophy of no philosophy. Because tell me, suppose right now I have a belief in no philosophy. Is this not a philosophy? This is a philosophy of no philosophy. Zen is not even a philosophy of no philosophy. It's beyond all this altogether. It reminds me of the founder of Zen in China. He was a Zen master named Bodhidharma. And he traveled a very long journey from India to China. to transmit the message of enlightenment. And he made just a few short statements. It doesn't really grasp the essence of Zen, but it's a very good finger pointing to the moon. He says, a transmission outside of scriptures, without depending on words, pointing directly to the mind of man, seeing into one's nature and becoming a Buddha. To be a Buddha is really the simplest thing in existence. It is your very nature. But just because people have been living as such a slave to their programming, such a slave to their conditioning, now what is the most simple has become almost the most impossible. And the Zen masters were very much aware of this very simple fact that the mind of man is so desperate to create boundaries and limitations out of just about everything. The mind is a bit like a blade. It's a blade which, let's say the truth is a vase. It will take the vase, smash this vase, break it down into small fragments, smash those fragments, break it down into even more smaller and smaller fragments. And the puzzle just gets more fragmented. More bits and pieces are scattered all over the place. And just by being obsessed with small bits and pieces, you might have some understanding into small elements of truth. But those small bits and pieces by themselves, it will never allow you to bring them all together, to see the whole vase, to see the truth as one whole. And this is very simple logic, that any small part is never capable of grasping the whole. So the whole approach of Zen is, it wants to strike to the very essence of things, to the most essential. Leave aside all beliefs, leave aside all philosophies. The only thing which has any relevance is your own inner experience, your own satori, your enlightenment. Without this inner transformation of man, then you may be a very intelligent person, you may have heaps of knowledge in your mind, you may be a great knowledgeable person, you may be a scholar, you may have PhD degrees, you may have gone into the university and left the university with great honors, you may have a great profession in life, but unless your consciousness has a deeper involvement into existence, then you've not even scratched the surface of the very truth of existence. Because truth is not a conclusion. And this is exactly why the Zen masters never emphasized a belief system or a philosophy. Because they understood that truth is not a conclusion that is to be grasped by the mind. You may have certain questions in your mind. Question is a good starting point, but think about it. Is any answer produced by any question truly capable of bringing you to a contentment with life? Of liberating you from the causes of your own suffering? Of bringing such a radical insight and transformation which opens totally new doors of perceiving things? Is it truly capable of quenching your thirst, fulfilling your hunger? It's not so. That's why if you look in the world, Hindus are suffering, Buddhists are suffering, Christians are suffering, Jews are suffering, atheists are suffering. So many different belief systems, and yet all are suffering alike. Somehow our belief systems have not managed to liberate us. So the only thing that Zen is concerned with is your liberation. And for this it has so many different approaches. But the most common approach that has been done in Zen is through the practice of Zazen. Zazen means sitting meditation. Actually, I should not say that it's about sitting meditation, because meditation is not really about the posture of the body. It reminds me of a situation where a disciple went to see a Zen master and he asked him, "Please teach me meditation." So the disciple, he sat in the lotus posture, straightened up his spine, closed his eyes, and was receptive to receive the teaching from the master. Then the master asked him, "What do you expect to get out of sitting meditation?" Then the disciple said, "I'm intending to be a Buddha. I want to become an awakened one. I want to realize what is my ultimate nature." Then the master said, he did not say sorry. The master, he just picked up a brick and with wordless communication, he just started polishing the brick. And the disciple, seeing this, he was simply confused. So the disciple asked, "Master, what are you trying to do?" And the master said, "I'm trying to create a mirror." Then the disciple said, "Okay, how can you create a mirror by just polishing a brick? This is so crazy and absurd." Then the master said, in exactly the same way, "How can you practice sitting meditation?" So the disciple again, he was confused. He said, "What do you mean by that?" Then the master said, "Think about driving a cart with horses connected, attached to it. When the horses come to a stop, when the cart comes to a stop, do you continue whipping the horses?" What he's saying that in a truly silent mind, do you need to continue cycling the wheels of your effort? Or is it spontaneous? So then the master said, if you think meditation is a question of sitting meditation, then that has nothing at all to do with the very spirit of meditation. If you want to know what the very spirit of meditation is, you should know that meditation is without any fixed form. What he's saying is something so enormously significant. He's basically saying that meditation is not a technique. The so-called practice of Zazen is not a practice if you really understand the very spirit of it. Zazen is not a practice. Meditation is not a technique. It's a certain quality of being. So if you're meditative as a natural quality of being, if you're walking, you will be meditative. If you're sitting down, you'll be meditative. If you're lying down, you'll be meditative. If you're going to sleep, you'll be meditative. If you're doing nothing, you'll be meditative. Whatever you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, you will be meditative. Your meditation will be an unbroken silence that's constantly flowing throughout all your actions. So, whatever we're calling the practice of Zazen is not really the practice of Zen. Zen is not something that can be practiced. As I said, the spirit of meditation is not a technique. Even the word Zen, it comes from a Sanskrit word, dhyana. And dhyana basically means meditation. When the science of dhyana went to China, it became known as Chan. When it left China and went to Japan, then it became known as Zen. So the very spirit of a meditative consciousness is not something that can be initiated as an effort of the mind. You have to relax into it. So much of this so-called methods of Zazen were just intended to help prepare your mind so you can relax into this spontaneous wakefulness, this natural wakefulness, which we are calling meditation. It's only once your consciousness, once the waters of your mind have become totally silent, that it's capable of being receptive to the truth. And everything in Zen, in one way or another, is just pointing towards this silence. There is a very well-known koan in Zen. In Zen koans, they're short, riddle-like phrases. They're not intended to be logical, because anything that can be grasped through logic is always very limited and superficial. So in Zen, some of these so-called riddles, they're not really riddles, but these phrases. A very well-known koan is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? You know what is the sound of two hands clapping, but what's the sound of one hand? Sounds very irrational, and it is. Sounds very illogical. But phrases like these are not meant to be philosophically contemplated upon. You take the koan, sit silently with the koan, and turn all your concentration and attention and energy and pour your whole being into this koan. Just focus. What is the sound of one hand clapping? And keep on going deeper and deeper into the question. And naturally your mind is going to manufacture so many different kinds of answers. That's why if you go to the master and you tell him, okay, I think the sound of one hand clapping is the sound of dripping water. Or I think the sound of one hand clapping is the sound of passing wind. Or I think the sound of one hand clapping is the sound of the wind as it touches on the bamboo sticks. Or just about anything. I think the sound of one hand clapping is the heat that comes from the sun. You give any logical answer, any logical conclusion, and it's basically going to be wrong. Because the whole function of these koans is not to produce a logical answer, not to stimulate the mind, but to bring you to a certain depth within you where you can move beyond the mind. It's not mind reinforcing, it's mind shattering. It wants your mind to come to a total silence. And in that silence, now you become the sound of one hand clapping. You are the sound of one hand clapping. So when the master asks you, what is the sound of one hand clapping? What he's basically asking you is, have you realized your innermost being? Show me the sound of one hand clapping. Show me your true nature. Don't talk about it. I'm not interested in your words. Words are very cheap. They cannot demonstrate that you've come to the insight, that you've come to the inner experience. Show me your inner experience. That you've touched on something in you which is birthless and deathless, which is without beginning and without end. Show me what you've got. And the master asking you these kinds of questions, you will have to respond so spontaneously in the moment. You will have to demonstrate that your very presence is the sound of one hand clapping. You have to demonstrate through your very existence that your whole being has become inflamed by enlightenment. And that's basically what everything in Zen is trying to provoke within you. There's so many different skillful means of Zen. One branch of Zen is called Rinzai Zen. And it emphasizes more forceful kind of approach to provoking your enlightenment, to provoking your satori. Another stream of Zen that has happened amongst the Buddhists is called Soto Zen. They are not so much concerned about a forceful, gradual, forceful approach to awakening. Its approach is very gradual. Rinzai is a very sudden approach. So actually we should not really be thinking of how enlightenment happens as being Rinzai Zen or Soto Zen. It's always happened either very gradually, step by step, walking along the path, climbing up the ladder, traveling through the unknown terrain, experiencing all kinds of boundaries, all kinds of obstacles, stumbling over and standing up again, stumbling over and standing up again, committing so many mistakes which strengthens your character, which sharpens your insight into things. It's a more gradual approach. You have to start from the valley and eventually climb all the way to the Himalayas. Rinzai Zen is a much more sudden approach. It wants to provoke a sudden awakening within you. If you're like water, does there ever come a point where the water gradually starts boiling? No. Water suddenly starts boiling out of nowhere. Once the water gathers enough intensity, in a split of a moment, it starts boiling. So is enlightenment gradual, or is enlightenment subtle, or is enlightenment sudden? In certain ways, yes, it is gradual. In certain ways, yes, it's also sudden. So Rinzai Zen and Soto Zen, they've just emphasized different attitudes, but they're actually not really different. Now, the more forceful approaches of Zen, it will not hesitate to sometimes shock you into awakening. That's why it's not uncommon that the master, he will just strike the disciple. And it's not out of aggression, it's not out of violence. On the contrary, it's out of enormous compassion. I recall a Zen master, his name was Rinzai. And he went to his master Ubaku and he asked him, please teach me about Zen. And the master simply took a stick and started beating the hell out of him. And just from that beating, he suddenly and spontaneously, in a split moment, realized his Buddha nature. Just that beating, it brought the mind to such a state of shock that it bypassed all his programming, it bypassed all his conditioning, and awakened a far more natural energy within one's being. And insight is always like that. Breakthroughs are always like that. They always arrive spontaneously, when you're least expecting it. So that is what all the more forceful approaches of Zen are trying to do. To bring your mind to such a spontaneous state where you can suddenly come to the breakthrough. It's a bit like this. Suppose you're entering into a forest. You think you're safe. You think you're secluded. And suddenly a wild animal attacks you. And just from the shock of it, just from the unpredictable nature of the situation, just for a few brief moments, your thoughts have become arrested. Your logic has become arrested. In fact, you're totally awake, totally alert. A more vital intelligence starts functioning within you. Or let's say you're sitting in the restaurant and the waitress is passing by and she falls over and shatters the plates. And again, just from the shock of it, again, your mind All thoughts of the mind are arrested. All activity of the mind is arrested. And your mind is just silent. Sometimes it happens in daily life, even for a brief moment or two. And the moments are so brief of that spontaneous silence that it passes by most of the time and you're not even aware of it. So in many ways, people have had glimpses into that silence. So Zen has always had also this very penetrating awareness of the very fact that insight is not something mechanical. That's why the enormous effort of all the Zen masters in assisting their disciples was to break through these mechanical habits, to break through the habitual patterns of the mind. The mind is really a master of creating boundaries out of just about everything. If you tell people, okay, become relaxed, they'll become too relaxed and to the point that they'll just simply become lazy. Or if you tell people, okay, you need to make an effort to come to know yourself. Now they'll be employing such enormous effort that they'll become too rigid. They'll become inflexible. So what's needed is just a middle point between the two. Your effort is needed, and yet at the same time a certain complementary naturalness is also needed. Something in you must be a bit artificial, a bit mechanical, and also something in you must be completely natural and completely vital and spontaneous. And when these two worlds clash together, now here's the functioning of a man, the real functioning of a human being, the creative energy of a human being. Neither one extreme, neither the other extreme, a balanced point between tension and release. It reminds me of a story of Gautama Buddha. He was one day sitting on the banks of the river, and a man happened to be passing by on a boat, and he was tuning an instrument and talking to his friend and explaining to him how he was tuning the instrument. And he said, if you tune the strings too tight, the string will simply snap. If you tune the strings too loose, still the instrument will not play. You need to tune it just in the middle, neither complete tension, neither complete relaxation, just a balanced energy between the two. So, all these things that I'm talking to you about Zen, coming back to what I had said earlier, don't think of it as Zen Buddhism. Its very nature is in being a Buddha. And all the spiritual traditions in their own ways, the paths are so many, infinite paths towards the One, but they're all indicating towards the same experience of living out of your Buddhahood. And if you're living out of your Buddhahood, then this is the life of Zen. Don't even call it Zen if that's a problem. This is the life of a Buddha.